friends. My name is Anita, and welcome to the Health Superstars podcast. This is episode 1, and I'm super excited to introduce this podcast to you guys because I am so passionate about health and the health space. And I'm not talking about just getting averagely healthy. I'm talking about being a health superstar, which is the reason I named this podcast that name. And it's really because in America, where I live, and other first world countries, it's very common for health to, for people to just be averagely healthy, and then everyone just be like, okay, that's socially acceptable. But the thing is that I've been able personally to achieve a state of optimal health where I now have energy all day long. I feel great all the time and I feel happy and energized. And I'm fueling my body with jet fuel, whereas previously I used to fuel my body with basically toxic sludge. And unfortunately, I feel like a lot of Americans and a lot of people are all kind of dealing with this situation. And it's very, very common for people to be eating these foods and have no idea that their bodies are becoming like these toxic dumping grounds for, this food. So basically, that's why I decided to start this podcast, and just a little bit of background about me before I talk about today's topic of the podcast and why basically I'm somebody that you can listen to is that I am certified in nutrition, and I became certified in nutrition primarily because I actually had very bad pre-diabetes, very bad cholesterol, and I had many of the symptoms that a lot of us in first world countries deal with today. I had acne, skin issues, bloating, like horrible bloating, a bunch of weight gain and fat pockets and weird areas. I couldn't get rid of the stubborn fat. I had brittle hair and nails. I was fatigued and exhausted all the time, and I would get these terrible slumps after I ate food. And really, the average person thinks a lot of these symptoms are normal, like these random headaches, random body pains, etc. But the truth is that none of these symptoms are normal. Our ancestors didn't really deal with these symptoms, and now we're dealing with these symptoms at an all-time high. And a lot of people believe that these issues, like super bad gut discomfort and stuff like that, is just completely normal, where it's not. And I'm so passionate to talk about this because I've been able to completely reverse my very bad pre-diabetes. It was so bad. I remember when I sat down at the doctor's office after my blood test, she told me basically I was kind of on the route to get a heart attack in 10 years. And I was only 19 when I got that diagnosis. And she said that I would need to be on insulin and also what you call metformin, which is the diabetes pill to help lower blood sugar. And we know what a epidemic that diabetes is in first world countries. And for me, I just couldn't accept that diagnosis when I had gotten it. And one thing that's kind of different for me than some other people. Oh, and here's my little dog coming in and showing me his toy. Sorry, buddy, I'm gonna have to kick you out for right now. All right, he doesn't want to get kicked out. He wants to come back. So sorry if you hear that pitter pattering. But basically, when I was 19 years old, when I was 18 years old, just a year prior to me being 19, I actually lost my dad from a very bad heart attack. He basically had very bad uncontrolled diabetes, and he ended up getting a heart attack, which ended up taking his life. And it was so painful for me. And I remember when I saw my dad going into the ground, I remember saying to myself, I can't die that way. No matter what I can do, this is a preventable death, and I don't want to die like this. And so I remember thinking that to myself. Then, only a year later, I am sitting at the doctor's office, and now the doctor's telling me that I am basically destined to the same exact fate as my father. And so this absolutely devastated me. Sorry, my dog is biting a little squeaky toy here, so I'm just going to have to ask him to go. Come on. Let's go. Oh, I know. Here. Well, there goes the microphone. Okay. Great start to the podcast. And he chose to go this way instead of the other way. So it knocked down the microphone. All right, just gonna dust that off and get started again. Cool. So, yeah, basically, that is why I decided to start this podcast because I was able to completely reverse those symptoms for myself. And unfortunately, I think like the average person is really dealing with insulin resistance and high blood sugar, etc. And the thing is that we don't realize as a society, which a lot of people don't realize, is I did a hemoglobin A1C test. And basically, what this means is that your blood sugar has been high for the last 3 months. And it's a test where they measure the amount of glucose, aka blood sugar, that's attached to your blood. That's why it's called a hemoglobin A1C test. And this will tell you if your blood sugar has been high over the last couple months. However, in order to actually get there, your blood sugar needs to be high for much longer before that test will come out with high blood sugar. So, what do I mean by that? Is I mean that your cells have to be insulin resistant for some time before your hemoglobin A1C test will actually show up as elevated. And the pancreas essentially creates this hormone called insulin, which helps the glucose in our body, aka blood sugar, get into the cells and give ourselves energy. And a lot of people are not aware of the fact because it's actually like a silent pandemic that they actually have a lot of insulin resistance. And some people have insulin resistance for a long time, years. I'm talking about before their hemoglobin A1C test will actually show up elevated. This is a problem because by the time your hemoglobin A1C test is elevated, your blood sugar has been high a long time and you could have been doing a lot of damage to your body. I like to say that blood sugar, think of it as little shards of glass in the blood, and it goes destroying the body slowly but surely. And if your blood sugar is very high, this is why diabetics deal with issues like neuropathy, where they actually have nerve damage and capillary damage in their eyes. That's why there's diabetic glaucoma, because it destroys the tiny little capillaries in your eyes, because that's what sugar does. And so, all this is said to just say that this is why I've started this podcast, because I was able to fully reverse all of the symptoms that I mentioned earlier that unfortunately a lot of people are dealing with. Millions and millions of people around the world are dealing with all of these symptoms, and it's typically coming from our environments and the food that we eat. And unfortunately, a lot of people are not aware of the fact that our environments are pretty toxic, all the way from what we're drinking, the water, microplastics, phthalates, aka forever chemicals, coming off of our walls and our clothes. It's not just the food. And then, of course, we have the food and cosmetic products and personal care products, which are absolutely littered with all sorts of chemicals and bad ingredients that destroy people's health. That is essentially why I've created this podcast, to help people reverse all of those things from their lives and to really induce healing and a positive health journey for people. And especially if you're just starting out, I want to make this very digestible and completely something that you can just get as soon as you come to this podcast, because I don't want it to be super complicated. I want health to be easy and accessible for everybody. And I know sometimes I really geek out, but that's okay because you can just replay it again if you have to, or you can shoot me a message personally and I'll be happy to break down anything that I've talked about. And I'm so passionate about this because really so many people are dealing with these symptoms, and it's not fair that we as a society are dealing with this. And typically a lot of corporations just don't care about our health ultimately, and they will put in chemicals. Like, for example, they'll put in strawberry flavor into a bar instead of actually adding strawberry, real strawberry. Two reasons. A, strawberry flavor tastes better, it's more addicting, it's cheaper, and it stimulates your taste bud more. However, if they added real strawberry, they'd have problems like A, it being more expensive, B, now they'd have to find a way to preserve it more, or it would have a shorter shelf life. Some of these companies, in order to save money, they allow their products to expire in years. Think about your food that's supposed to be fresh, expiring in years to many months down the line from when it was created. This is not normal. If they used real strawberry in the example that I gave, the product would last much less time. And that is how fresh, real food is supposed to be. It's not supposed to last 2 years on the shelf, and it's not supposed to stimulate your taste buds so much and trick your brain into thinking that it's the best thing ever. A lot of these chemicals do trick our brains into continually eating more and more. That's actually what a lot of flavorings do as well. They don't just taste really good, but they trick your brain into thinking that this is so tasty, I have to keep eating it and I have to keep eating it. And this is why obesity is such a pandemic in our country as well. I actually also used to be obese. I was about 30 pounds heavier than I am right now of fat weight. And this was something that really bothered me at the time as well, because it really does sap your energy a lot. And I always, as I said, wanted to be in a state of optimal health. And it really crushed me that at 19 years old, I had zero energy to do anything that any of my friends were doing. And I remember when I got that diagnosis, I just sat in the shower. I actually kneeled down and asked God, why is this happening to me? Why is this happening to me? Right. And so I just couldn't accept that diagnosis. And I hope the same for you, that you choose not to accept the status quo of health in this country and any first world country, or for wherever you're listening in from, right? Because it's not fair. It's just not fair what's happening to us as a society. The companies don't care, and we need to take back our health collectively as a society so we have the energy to achieve our dreams and our goals and be the person that we want to be for our families. And when you're in a great state of health, it really does help your confidence as well. So, this is really the reason I started this podcast. And then also, just continuing off that here, I actually have some statistics from webmd.com. Don't laugh, guys. This website, whenever I have even a small symptom, like if my arm itches, I'll look it up on WebMD, and then I feel like I'm gonna die, because it'll be like, you could have a terrible disease that's an infection that will eat your arm off or something, because that's literally WebMD, and WebMD will just scare the life out of me. But these are some great statistics from WebMD that we have here for the top 10 causes of death in 2021. And this was the basically responsible for 75% of deaths in America. And so number 1 here, we have heart disease. Number 2, we have cancer. Number 3, we have COVID-19. 4 are accidents. I presume car accidents and things of that sort, or accidents on a job. 5 is stroke. 6 is respiratory diseases. 7 is Alzheimer's. 8 is diabetes. And 9 is chronic liver disease and cirrhosis of the liver. And finally, 10, we have kidney disease. Now, I say this because 9 out of 10 of these are health related. Obviously, a car accident is not, but the rest of these are health related. And many of these diseases are taking people off of this earth, very sadly, before their time. A lot of these are also scientifically proven to be preventable. And a lot of people chalk everything up to genetics, but it's not just genetics. A lot of these diseases are 100% preventable, like diabetes, for example. And it's just such a shame, right? Because we are the number one most advanced society when it comes to healthcare. Yet we are dealing with issues that are taking people sometimes well ahead of the time that they would have naturally died by natural causes because of these terrible diseases. Now, we know that not every single case of cancer or dementia or all of these diseases are 100% preventable. We know this. However, many of them are preventable. I believe it was the University of Kansas that I was reading, and I'll link it below in a YouTube video format. I have a YouTube channel as well. It's called Anita Lauren, and I'm also going to be posting this podcast to YouTube. But basically, it said that many cancers are preventable, and it's primarily caused by diet, lifestyle, and other risk factors like what we're exposed to, for example, cigarettes. Now, not every cancer is preventable, obviously, but we know that a lot of them are. We also know that heart disease is preventable. Heart disease is actually not and diabetes are not diseases that our ancestors used to deal with. So we know that these are new diseases. Actually, prior to the late 1800s, diabetes didn't even exist. There was actually no reported cases of diabetes, right? And so now we're seeing diabetes coming up like a world pandemic. Why? Because of our diets and our lifestyles and what we're exposed to. So we know that a lot of these things can be prevented. We know that Alzheimer's disease and dementia, obviously not every case can be prevented, but it's actually being called type 3 diabetes because when you have high blood sugar, it, as I said, destroys parts of your body and it really hurts your brain to have very high blood sugar. We also know that alcohol consumption, people that consume a lot of alcohol also have a higher risk for dementia. So we have these statistics and we can do something about it. We don't have to be another statistic in the healthcare system here in this country. And that's exactly what I did when I was 19 years old. I refused that diagnosis. I refused the fact that I had a very high blood sugar and was pretty much diabetic. And I said to me, that's not going to be my future and that's not going to happen to me. And I really hope the same for you. And that is why we have this podcast. Thank you so much for watching today. You're amazing if you made it to the end, and I really appreciate it. And I'm going to be posting every single week on a weekly basis. Thank you so much. And if you have any questions at all that you want featured on the podcast or in this video, because I'm posting it both to YouTube and the podcast, please feel free to send me a message. My Instagram is at It's Anita Lauren. And I also have a Facebook group called Health Superstars. And if you really have any questions at all, feel free to reach out to me. Thank you so much. Hope you have an awesome day.